Okay, so you heard chapter 3, and a few things that I forgot to mention, and just a little precursor. This is all new to me. I'm not the best at editing. I did realize mid through the chapter 3 that it's actually 2 chapters, so I cut it off at that point. So that's why you have an interesting little ending there. It seems a little odd, but I try to do it as clean as possible. Also, I forgot to mention a trigger warning. If you didn't get a clue from the prologue and you didn't get a clue from the story of Medusa, there will be issues brushed on in here and fully looked at in here about sexual violence, rape, a lot of different issues associated with abuse, sexual abuse, and things like that. So I will do my best to try and mark those particular chapters so that you are forewarned that they may happen. So we're going to start on chapter 4. Chapter 3 was interesting. Cost of beauty. Um, cost of beauty. As I've already touched on, a lot of times individuals who are pretty deal with a lot of the same problems that anyone else would deal with. They don't understand. They may not understand their surroundings. They may not understand how other people react to them, and so they deal with those situations. Medi definitely deals with this. She continues to deal with people staring with her, approaching her, having conversations, and she having no clue why they're trying to have conversations with her. She really doesn't. She doesn't understand. And, even when she gets frustrated, there's still this semblance of, why does this keep happening to me? And then we get into the awful scene with Alcibiades and his reaction to her standing up for herself and making decisions that he doesn't approve of. And just as it can be now, not as common now, but it still exists, especially in certain parts of the world, in certain cultures, in certain attitudes, even in America. Standing up to a man and saying, no, this is not what I want, is considered completely unacceptable. You're just supposed to go along. This is your role in life. This is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to, just like Medi's father said, you're supposed to grow up, get married, and have babies. I grew up with that. 1990s, being told that my role in life is to get married and have babies. That was my role in life. Sure, you can go and have a job. Sure, you can go and have a career. But first and foremost, your purpose in life and everything else is put on hold is to have children. Even now, I know I've seen those pressures, even on my own child, my oldest. I know that pressure was pushed upon her, and so it exists. So you need to understand that even though we may consider our society more open-minded, there is still this patriarchal reign and this position for women that is expected, and even more so. And even Medi deals with this, to get away from that required position to get married and have babies. She has to choose a life of virtue. She has to choose a life of chastity. She has to basically go in the equivalent of what would be a nunnery, a place that, her virtue would be protected. So you're going to see that in chapter 4, and we're going to discuss that and those interesting aspects. But Alcibiades, the way he acted is completely expected, because society says that he is, by law, due her body, and that shouldn't have been then. It shouldn't have been now. So let's go on. I've done enough rambling. Let's go on to chapter 4. And my thing decided to jump and reset, so give me just a second. I had this all queued. Okay, chapter 2. There we go. Chapter 4, Woman's Virtue. I don't know why today you're getting a blue line, but you're going to get the blue on my neck. So, The next day, as she strode down the path to the sea and through the village, people were staring at her. Not an unusual occurrence, except today there was something different about their looks and their murmurs. One woman was bold enough to step in front of her. Meddy stopped suddenly in surprise and stared at the woman, who grimaced at her and then spat at Meddy's feet. Meddy stumbled back, then moved quickly past the woman, very confused. Perseus, who was nearby filling water buckets, came over. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, but that was strange." Perseus surveyed the market, also noting how the townsfolk were glaring at Meddy. "You go on. I'll see what we can. I'll see what I can find out." Meddy headed down to the water and began to fish. She was worried, but found some peace in her task. There was a rhythm and grace in casting a net. You had to gather up the circular net just so between your fingers, then draw back your arms, twisting at the torso to give smooth, graceful movement to the net as you released it to fly through the sky and land into the water. Then, with a quick tug, weighted edges closed together and captured its prey within. You could catch all sorts of sea life in a net, typically fish, but a crab or two, some shrimp, all depending where you cast the net. Her mind began to clear and her body relaxed from the repetition. She was picking up the latest catch from the net when Perseus returned. The look on his face was serious, and Meddy's heart raced. Perseus kneeled and helped clean the net. "I spoke to the villagers. They say Alcibiades has called a council. He claims your virtue is in question and is claiming a breach of contract." She stared at him. "My what?" "Your virtue. He says he found you with another man yesterday." "What?" she spat. "What did happen yesterday?" "Mother was expecting you for dinner, but you never came." The thought of yesterday flashed across her eyes. Her throat tightened and breath quickened. Her fingers curled around the net and she clenched her teeth in a combination of anger and shame. She didn't want to talk about what happened, but if she remained quiet, others would believe his lie. As she mulled over what to say, she saw another figure approaching them. It was Steno, and the look on her face was grim. Meddy leapt to her feet and rushed towards Steno. "I didn't do anything wrong. I already told you what happened," she said through panting breath. Steno took her hand with assurance and replied, "And I told you before, I believe you." Danae came out of her cottage, wiping flour from her hands. "Steno, what brings you here? Is everything okay?" Meddy held back a flood of emotions. She looked from each face, seeing their apprehension, and it unsettled her to the core. She grabbed the net and walked back into the sea. She could sense them talking behind her, but she did not want to hear their concerns, doubts, and fears. She bore enough of her own. Meddy's heart raced as she stood before the council of elders. They stared back with sagging, disapproving jowls. Among them was Polydictes. The king sat behind them, watching over the trial. Her eyes ran over the crowd, seeing Perseus, but no Danae. In fact, no women at all in the crowd. Where was Steno? Steno promised she would be here and help her through this. "Meddy," one of the elders addressed her. "Are you not betrothed to Alcibiades?" "I am," she tentatively replied. "You are a postulate of Athena." "I am." Did you become a postulate before or after the betrothal?" "After." "Despite your time as a postulate, you have continued to accept visits from Alcibiades." "I have." "Since your betrothal, you have accepted the advancements of other men." "No." "Have other men given you gifts?" "Well, yes." A murmur of disapproval rolled through the crowd and across the aging faces of the council. "And you have been seen conversing with men as you walk through town." "I suppose suppose. I'm not sure how speaking. He cut her off. But you say that you have not accepted the advancements of other men. I fear you are lying. I am not, she stammered. Alcibiades states that he found you with another man in a secluded grotto. It is a lie. I was in that grotto with no one but Alcibiades. So you were alone with him. Yes, a man you are not married to. You know I was betrothed to him, but not married. What is your point? I wasn't with another man. I was with Alcibiades. Yes, we were alone, but it was because I wanted to tell him I didn't want to marry him. The surrounding audience began to mutter amongst themselves. You were breaking your betrothal? Yes. But the betrothal agreement is not between you and Alcibiades. It is between your father and Alcibiades. I'm the one getting married, she said, raising her voice in frustration. I should be able to decide who I marry. The noise of the audience grew. A staff was rapped against the floor to call them back to silence. You have no say in the matter. He flippantly turned away from her to Alcibiades. Alcibiades, is it true that Medi requested an end to your betrothal? Only after I caught her with another man, said Alcibiades. Medi gawked at Alcibiades. There was no other man. She looked back at the elders while pointing at Alcibiades. I was alone with Alcibiades and we were fighting. I told him I didn't want to marry him and he attacked me. Now you're claiming he attacked you. Not claiming, stating. Medi's previous fears and shame of the attack were replaced with sheer anger. Alcibiades attacked me and tried to violate me. One elder said, you were alone with a man, not your husband, in a secluded grotto. She stared in utter shock. I was the one attacked, and you're telling me it is my fault? Another nodded. A woman such as yourself should not be alone. It's dangerous. A woman such as me? What do you mean? You are too young and too beautiful to be alone with a man that isn't your husband. To do such can at the very least damage your reputation and value, and at the most bring you harm. So I'm too pretty to be left alone. He smiled a nearly toothless grin. Yes. Medi was beyond confused. Her head was spinning from the accusations. She shook her head. He attacked me. Alcibiades, an elder asked. Did you attack Medi? Yes, as is my right, since I found her with another man. 3 long years I have waited. 3 long years, and she denies me what is mine by law. The elders nodded, and the audience murmured in agreement. I wasn't with another man, she firmly stated. Perhaps we need to confirm your virtue, replied one of the council. Her eyes narrowed. What do you mean, confirm my virtue? If you were, as you claim, not with another man, if you have maintained your chastity as a postulate and as per agreement under the betrothal contract, then your virtue will be confirmed and your word believed. Why is my word in question and not his? She demanded, pointing at Alcibiades. Alcibiades is a well-respected member of the community. And I'm not? No. He clasped his hands and calmly asked, now, do you have a man to attest for your virtue? It is my virtue. Should I not be able to speak for myself? Of course not. Finding herself panicked and desperate, she pointed towards Polydictes. He knows me. Perhaps he can attest for me. An elder looked at him. Polydictes, do you know this woman? I do. Can you attest to her virtue? I cannot. Medi's heart sank. I have sat at your table. Your wife is like a mother to me, your son, a brother. Polydicte's eyes dropped. And this is why I cannot attest, because I have seen you with my son, and you show no decorum. The crowd became unruly, now spitting and jeering at Medi. Medi looked into the mob of angry men for Perseus. He was shouting too, but it was unclear what he was saying. She dropped her head now, completely hopeless. The elder rapped his staff again, demanding calm. Medi's voice was tight with tears, but she croaked. How exactly do you expect me to confirm my virtue? You will be examined. The statement hung in the air, allowing Medi time to hear it and understand. They meant to check her virginity through physical examination, but Alcibiades had violated her. She was still sore and bruised from his attack. Any examination would show that she was not, by their definition, virtuous. Against her choice, Alcibiades had violated her, and now she would be condemned for it. She hung her head, and tears began to well in her eyes. She steadied her breath in an attempt to hold them back, but she was losing all control. There is no need for an examination. Steno's voice broke through the crowd. Medi's eyes lifted and found Steno standing next to the elders. Yes, there is, an elder replied, wary that a woman dare stand equal to the council. How else will we know? Steno lifted a girdle into the air. Steno lifted a silver girdle into the air. The audience audibly gasped when the girdle moved and slithered and wrapped around Steno's wrist. Since this council decided to question the word of one of Athena's daughters, I have felt it fitting to bring a gift from the goddess of wisdom. It can only be worn by those who are honest and true. If you lie while you're wearing this girdle, it will squeeze you and you will suffer. She walked over to Medi and motioned for Medi to lift her arms. Medi complied, and the silver snake slithered from Steno's wrist onto Medi's waist. The girdle was cool and made her skin tingle as the etched scales writhed, then stilled, turning into a mundane belt. Medi, were you with another man in that grotto? Steno asked. No, Medi replied. The snake remained still. Have you ever willingly laid with a man? No, Medi was shocked by the question. Did Alcibiades attack you? Yes. Did he violate you? Medi shuddered softly, but the snake remained dormant. Yes. Steno caught Medi's unsure gaze and gave her a warm smile. She then slowly pivoted on her feet and addressed the council. Her virtue is intact. The group of elders glared back, all wearing glowering frowns. Alcibiades blustered, How are we to know that the girdle even works? With a mere glance from Steno, the girdle whipped off Medi and towards Alcibiades. He let out a yelp and tried to paw the snake away, but it slithered around his rotund belly with lightning speed and stilled. With a glint in her eye, Steno grinned broadly. Alcibiades, did you lie to this council? Alcibiades' pulse quickened and he began to sweat, but he did not answer. Alcibiades, did you lie to this council? No, he replied through clenched teeth. The belt began to tighten around his waist. He grabbed at the tightening coil, trying to get it off. He let out another yelp in pain as the snake started making it difficult to breathe. Alcibiades, did you lie to this council and tell them Medi was with another man? No! The snake wrenched its head and sunk its teeth into Alcibiades' side. He groaned, falling to the ground, wallowing in agony. Simply answer the question truthfully, and the pain will stop. Yes, Yes, I lied. It was all a lie, he bellowed. The snake released its grasp and slithered back to Steno. You should not have lied. Steno spoke in a smooth, cool tone. The only sound that came out of Alcibiades were gurgles. Steno looked back to the elders. Athena has spoken. She then took Medi by the hand and started to lead her out. Groaning on the floor, Alcibiades spat at Medi. It should not matter if I lie. There is a contract and she broke it. Groaning on the floor, Steno stood over Alcibiades. Her presence seemed to grow in menace as she gazed down at him. A contract, we agreed, was null if Medi was unduly persuaded or pressed. A contract that gave Medi the right to choose devotion to the goddess rather than devotion to a husband. A contract which is now broken due to your actions, not hers. Alcibiades' hair stood on end. Medi glanced at Steno, curious what was causing him to be so terrified, and saw her eyes change for a moment. Medi realized Steno was not entirely human. Steno squeezed her hand in assurance, and they began to walk out. The sea of men parted in stunned silence, watching the women exit. Alcibiades began to stammer in protest, but no one was listening to him now. As they walked back to the temple, Medi asked, "What will happen to Alcibiades?" "If they stop the bleeding, he will recover, but, Medi asked, "he will never be able to lie again." "Steno," Medi began, "my virtue is no longer in question. But Alcibiades, no one can take your virtue. They can violate you. They can hurt you." Sorry. "No one can take your virtue. They can violate you. They can hurt you. But virtue is about your actions, not what is thrust upon you." Medi stopped walking, absorbing in what Steno was saying. Steno presented the girdle and slipped it on Medi's waist. "Wear this so that you know and others can see how honorable you are." But I let Alcibiades do things. By choice or by coercion and obligation. She felt terribly guilty for allowing Alcibiades to coerce her, and more so when her body enjoyed it, even if she didn't. She hung her head again and tears started to fall. "You don't have to speak, Medi. The girdle reveals the truth. See how it doesn't move?" She pulled Medi into her arms and let the girl cry. They stood there a very long time, tightly woven as the older woman passed her strength onto the other. Soon, all of this will be a fading memory. "Medi!" came a shout. The women turned to find Perseus running up to them. Breathless, he reached out to Medi. "Medi, I'm so sorry." She pulled away from him, clearly angry. "Medi, what my father said." "Yes, what he said. How dare he? What exactly have I done to deserve that?" "I don't know. You were no better, shouting and jeering with the crowd. That's not..." "No," she shouted, knocking his hand away again. "I loved all of you, and that's the way you see me?" She was now shaking with fury. No, I won't be treated like that." She turned toward the temple. "Medi, please!" "Leave me alone, Perseus. I will never cross your father's threshold again." It's chapter 5. All right, or it's chapter 4. Chapter 5 is next. All right, so please like, share, comment, subscribe. And if you have any particular questions, have anything outside of the story that you have questions on the histories, I'm more than happy to answer those questions as well. I have a degree after all, and it's kind of my passion to research. So I'm happy to do that, and I will see you on chapter 5.